Hi everyone, I am Dr. Ludmila and welcome to the HIbiscus Tea Cafe. This is a place where we come together and talk about all things health and wellness. We talk about whole food, we talk about issues with whole food, we talk about disease, we talk about how we can overcome disease, how we can prevent it, and we also talk about the issues we have, the challenges when we are dealing with disease. We talk about stress, we talk about lifestyle, we talk about all kinds of things. It's just a safe space where we can talk about all things health and wellness and try to find solutions together as a community. I hope that you will enjoy yourself and that you will grab your favorite cup of tea and join me at the HIbiscus Tea Cafe. Welcome. Can you afford to celebrate? That's the question I asked today. It just came to my mind because aside from the fact that we have a government shutdown and a lot of people are in distress, we also have another thing that's going on. This month is November and it's Diabetes Awareness Month. And what's going on? About 50% of people in the United States are either diabetic or pre-diabetic. And about 75% of people are overweight or are obese. That's a serious problem. So in light of the fact that we're going to celebrate the holidays, regardless of our circumstances, celebration is one of the things that we all love to do. We love to come together, we love to fellowship, and we love to eat lots of food. And around the holidays, we consume so many carbohydrates. We overconsume, actually, if you ask me. So I wanted to go over some things with you because if you are one of those people who's diabetic or pre-diabetic or concerned about your weight, I would love for you to consider these things. While I know that we're facing some serious times, some challenging times, there are ways for you to celebrate without being able to without overindulging in all this food that may not be so good for you, without overindulging in processed foods and sugars and things that are high in fat. Because diabetes is becoming a real problem. Actually, I take that back. It is a real problem. It's a crisis, actually, if you ask me. And it's not just a crisis among the elders. It's a crisis among the younger people as well. We're seeing that diabetes is starting to affect younger and younger generations. So while we're thinking about celebrating the holidays in the name of tradition, let's try to think about something. Should tradition not keep us healthy, or should tradition help to get us in a worse condition and even kill us? Now that might get me in trouble, but it's true. If you think about all the things that we like to eat for the holidays, most of it lacks fiber and most of it is not that healthy for us, but it tastes good. So when I ask the question, can we afford to celebrate? Yes, we can afford to celebrate, but the question is how and why. So one of the things that I want to talk about is the amount of processed sugars that's in our food. And that actually helps to cause diabetes. Because see, diabetes is caused when the body cannot process the sugar that we take in because we're not producing enough insulin. So when we eat sugars, when we eat carbohydrates, our brain tells us, there's carbohydrates coming in, and it tells our liver to start producing insulin via the pancreas. But when we have sugar and we have insulin and we have cells where the insulin cannot get into the cell to help us process the sugar, it stays in our bloodstream. So here you've taken in a bunch of sugar. Your body tells you, okay, I'm going to produce some insulin for you to hold the sugar's hand and take your sugar into the into the cell so that it can produce energy. But if you cannot take it into the cells, because there's too much insulin, it's so overwhelmed, there's not enough insulin for all that sugar, then it stays into your bloodstream, and that's the problem. This is why you see a lot of people who have diabetes also have kidney issues, because the kidney filters your blood. And if your blood has too much sugar in it, you get problems. You get inflammation. Blood sugar also thickens the blood. So you also have circulatory problems, which is why you see a lot of people having things like neuropathy, issues with blood flow. Have you ever heard of people who have diabetes having amputations? A lot of times it seems to almost go hand in hand, unfortunately. But we can avoid all those things. So again, can we afford to celebrate? Yes, we can, but we have to watch what we eat. We do not have to be perfect. We're not working towards perfection. We're working towards an ideal place where all of us can feel healthy and where we're not overburdened after the holidays to then go on a diet and try to figure out what we did during the holidays so we can, after the holidays, drive ourselves crazy to go on diets that do not work. So the first thing I would say to you is, if you're going to celebrate, ask yourself, Why am I celebrating? Am I celebrating to fellowship, or am I celebrating to just stuff myself with anything inside in the name of tradition? I personally do not like to think of tradition as something that has to stay in the same place all the time, because food has evolved. People have evolved. Time has evolved, and things have changed tremendously. Things have changed with our food system. And I'll tell you, research has shown 70% of our food is toxic. A lot of our food is so processed that it's not even real food, actually. You can't even call it real food. When you look at some of the ingredients in our food, that alone should scare you. So ask yourself, why am I celebrating? Am I celebrating because I want to have a healing, healthy fellowship with my family, my loved ones, my friends? Or am I just going to celebrate because tradition tells me I have to have all this food? That's not true. I don't believe that. I believe that people celebrate because they want to fellowship together. I think fellowship is the more important thing than the food. But the food is just what brings us together, right? But fellowship is really what we enjoy. So I believe that if all of us took steps towards healthier eating, a healthier lifestyle, we would be able to look at our food collectively and say, we should not do that. Not only I should not do that, but we should not do that to ourselves, to each other. I have friends who sometimes tell me, well, I don't want to eat this, but my family likes it, so I'm just going to go and cook it. Okay, so let's take a step back. Now we're getting into something else. It's called self-love. If I love myself enough, then I should feel confident. I should feel confident to say, okay, I'm going to love myself enough to not do that to my body. Now, I may respect what everybody else's choices are, but me, myself, and I am going to try to stay healthy. I don't want to do diets after the holidays. I want to take precautions before the holidays so that I don't have to go on a diet after the holidays. They don't work. They really don't. I'm going to take some lifestyle changes because I realize that with the statistics that I just gave you, I don't want to be part of the stats. I don't want to be that number. And I also don't want my loved ones to be part of that number. And some of us during the holidays sit at the table with loved ones who already have these issues. They're overweight, they're obese, they have kidney issues, they have diabetes, they're pre-diabetic, they have high blood pressure, they have heart disease. And we still sit at the table and consciously sit there and just eat this food that is high in calories, low in fiber, low in nutritional value. And we do it in the name of nutrition. And I say to all of you, stop. This is not a judgment. It is not. I'm just here to tell you that we can afford to celebrate, but we need to look at what's going on. They're not just numbers. I'm not just rattling statistics off on you. These are numbers. These are people. These are your loved ones, your friends. These are people that you are around. And if we can't do it by ourselves, maybe we can do it together. Because sometimes when you walk in this journey alone, for some of us, it's easy to say, well, I'm going to do this by myself and then I'll catch up with you later. But for some of us, it's easier to do it collectively. So at this time, when we have so much going on, there's so many stresses in the world already. Let's try to figure out to focus on our health and say, what would health look like if I was in control? So if I was in control, the first thing I would do was to say, you know what? When I'm celebrating this holiday, do I need all the processed foods that usually traditionally come with the holidays? And the answer is no. You don't need it. I don't need it. Your friends don't need it. Your loved ones don't need it. So what do you do? Well, I'm glad you asked. There are ways to cook your food, prepare your foods, without putting all the processed sugars in them, without all the enriched flours, which have been stripped of all their nutrients and have no value. It means that we have to get creative. But if we remember why we're celebrating, is it worth getting creative? And I say, absolutely it is. Now, my dad used to say Rome wasn't built in one day, and I agree. So it may take a little while, but if you start now, we still have some weeks before Thanksgiving and definitely several weeks before Christmas and other holidays, other religious holidays and other cultural holidays that we celebrate. I encourage you to start now by thinking, well, it's not just about the fact that we have a government shutdown and a lot of people don't have access to food. But what we can do is we can first of all look at the fact that we always traditionally eat so much food. Do we need so much food? And the answer is that technically speaking, we don't need all those calories. We just do it for the sake of tradition. So I encourage you to look at that and say, maybe I can cook a little less. Maybe I don't need to cook so much. But then again, you might say, well, Ludmila, I do need to cook that much because when I cook that food, whatever's left over, I use it during the week. I respect that. I agree with that. That's a good thing to do. So you're cooking for not just the holidays, but you're cooking for during the week because maybe you don't have a lot of time. Maybe you're working, you have a family, life just is so busy and you don't have time to go and stand in the kitchen every day. I get that. But even so, you can still monitor how much you have to eat and how much cooking you need to do. The first thing I will say is look at all the processed foods. That is the first thing. We have flours that are processed enriched, stripped of all their nutrients. We have sugars that are not natural sugars. We have carbohydrates in sugary drinks. We have things that are filled with high fructose corn syrup. Check it out. Read your labels. Start reading labels. And if you tell yourself that's a lot of work, well, let me tell you, reading labels and knowing what you put in your mouth is an investment in your health. It is saying to yourself, I love myself enough that I want to know what I'm going to eat today and each and every day. Because you see, we don't want to end up in the hospital first and then find out, oh my goodness, now I have to make changes. And during the holidays, I don't know if you know this, but during the holidays, the rate of hospitalization actually goes up. And you know what? The sad thing is it doesn't just go up here, but it goes up in other countries as well, where we celebrate holidays during the end of the year and people do the same thing. I used to live in the Middle East and we had the same thing there. People actually had to be warned for the holidays to say, hey, the leaders of the country would actually warn the people and say, wait a minute, just make sure that during this holiday, you don't overdo it. We don't want to see you ending up in the hospital. Now, I've never seen leaders do that in the United States, but we might as well do the same thing. So can you afford to celebrate? I ask that question again. Yes, you can. But watch what you eat. Read the labels. And then ask yourself, am I buying whole food that is not processed? And am I over processing the food? Because it's not just about buying processed foods, but sometimes we buy the foods whole. We buy fresh produce, right? We buy meats, fish, and then we cook them, we grill them, we bake them, we fry them, we do all kinds of things to them and over process it to the point that we actually strip it from its nutrients by itself. I remember there was a time where I loved to stir fry bell peppers, but when I started eating raw bell peppers, it tasted just as delicious. So for instance, when you're preparing salads, make sure that you put a lot of different vegetables in your salads this holiday, because when you do that, you're adding lots of fiber to your system, and fiber is good for your gut. It's good for your microbiome. It's good for your bowels. Your body will thank you for it. Everybody needs fiber. Meat has no fiber. I want to repeat that. Meat has no fiber. Processed meat is full of carcinogens. I didn't say that. I'm just the messenger. The World Health Organization has established that processed meats, such as bacon, hot dogs, sausages, these are all processed meats. Lunch meats, they are number one carcinogen next to tobacco. So think about that. I know people who say, yeah, but the bacon tastes so good. Well, I'll tell you why it tastes so good. Because it has been infused with all kinds of chemicals that are quite addictive, actually. And if I took you to the slaughterhouse, you would run. You wouldn't want to be there. So what we do is, we don't go to the slaughterhouse, of course. We don't even go to butchers anymore. That's from back in the days. But what we do is we take our meat from the store, where it's probably sometimes been buttered up a little bit with some color to make it look even fresher. That happens. I didn't say it. It's true. Do the research. And then we get this meat that looks so deliciously red. Then we go home, right? And then we fry it, bake it, roast it, or do all kinds of stuff to it. But it has no fiber. But that becomes the main part of our meal. We get big turkeys. Now, turkeys are bigger than chickens, but my God, the turkeys that we get these days are ginormous. Have you ever thought about the fact that these turkeys, that's not normal? That's not normal. They are injected with things that make them grow that big. So these are unnaturally big meats that you're going to eat. And when you're eating it, the things that were injected into the meat don't separate themselves from what you're eating. No, you're eating that too. And if you look at that, this is one of the reasons why we see people having such adverse effects towards food nowadays. Because half of us don't even know most of us actually, I should say, don't even know what we're eating anymore. Because our food is not only so processed, but our food is so treated with antibiotics, with growth hormones. And depending on how sensitive your body is, or how genetically sensitive you are, or how chronically ill you are, you might be more sensitive to these things, and it just exacerbates everything. And I know there are people who are on medications and having heart issues and still eating all these things during Thanksgiving in the name of tradition. So can we afford to celebrate? Yes. But if we can minimize the foods that are harmful to us and maximize the foods that are nutritious and good for us, we don't have to have all these adverse events that end us up in the hospital, or that end us up on diets, or that may just make you so stuffed, it makes your stomach hurt afterwards, but you're like, oh, it was so good, but oh, my stomach's going to hurt me. We can do that. Matter of fact, have you ever heard somebody say, girl, that thing was so good, but I know I'm going to pay for it later? What? Yes, it's so good, girl, but I'm going to pay for it later. Why would you want to do that to yourself? Why would you want to do that to yourself? You have to start exerting some self-control, I know, and we can do that together. So, the other thing that I was thinking about also was, wouldn't it be nice if before Thanksgiving, before any holiday, that we not just sit together and talk about, oh, what are we going to eat? What are you going to bring? What are you going to bring? What are we going to cook? And all the things that we're going to make, and just fill up the table. But what if we had a discussion first about, is what we're eating really good for us? And when we're talking about tradition, right, I think about insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So when we're talking about tradition, we don't want tradition to become insanity. So we can change tradition a little bit, or maybe a lot. We don't have to keep tradition the same way, because guess what? Our food has changed. Our food has evolved, and in a lot of ways, unfortunately, for the worst. So if our food has changed, then tradition has to change. If we know that our meats are full of carcinogens, heterocyclic amines that are full of carcinogens, especially in our chickens, that our fish is full of fat, even our salmon, we can't just keep eating the way we used to eat. Yeah, well, grandma used to eat it and she still lived till about 100. Good for grandma. But guess what? When grandma was born and when she was young, the food was not as processed as it is now. And if you look at the numbers of chronic disease and the numbers of how our food evolved into processed foods and foods that were artificially injected with growth hormones, you will see that these statistics go hand in hand. All right? Something as, for instance, let's take celiac disease, let's take gluten sensitivity, let's take leaky gut. Those diseases have increased in the same rate that our processing of our food has increased, which means that you can tell that the pattern of our processing food has not been good for our health. Now, there's some things that we can do for our Thanksgiving, aside from just talking about whether things are healthy for us. We can just decide, you know what? Let's start looking at what actually helps us more. Let's start learning a little bit more about our food, because the other thing I want to say is that we can afford to celebrate, but we cannot afford not to know what goes in our body. So it's about time that we all start learning more about our food. What is whole food? What is processed food? Do you and your family understand the difference? Do you and your family understand that with whole food, you can do a lot more than with processed food for your health? So I encourage you to have these discussions. Try it. You may feel a little uncomfortable. Maybe start with one friend or start with, one relative, maybe your parent, just bring the discussion up. People don't always have to agree, but if the discussion doesn't start, when is it going to start? When are we going to stop this chronic disease disaster that we are all facing? And, as much as we celebrate or we observe awareness months, we observe prostate cancer awareness in September, we observe breast cancer awareness in October, we observe diabetes awareness in November. And then we go and celebrate with the same things that are the culprit of why we have these diseases in the first place. And I say that because 95% of all cancers, some people say 90%, so let's say between 90 to 95% of all cancers are due to lifestyle. Only 5% of all cancers are due to genetics, which means that what health would look like if we were in control, it would look like us understanding what we put in our mouth and how it impacts our body. And also understanding that whatever goes in our mouth and goes into our gut is where it all starts. Because I will say most, if not every disease begins with inflammation. And it starts with putting things in your mouth that are inflammatory, that are full of processed chemicals, that are full of artificial artificial things, food colorings, sugars and oils, salts, things that we can minimize, if not eliminate. So I encourage you to know that you can do this by having communication about your food. Talk about your food. There's nothing wrong with talking about food, but sometimes we feel so uncomfortable because we don't want to shake the boat with tradition. Again, as I said before, tradition has to change because our food has changed. You deserve better, and you should love yourself more than to continue the tradition with foods that you know are not good for you. I'm saying this to empower you to take control of your own health. You can do this. So for these holidays, I hope that you will think about this. I hope that you will consider that you deserve better. I hope that you will consider that there is no need to just have all this food in your system knowing it's not good for you. You don't have to eat things that you know are not good for your body. You don't have to partake in activities that you know are not going to make you feel good afterwards. It's not necessary. I highly encourage you to check out our website because we actually offer classes to show you how to cook whole food. And we show you how to do that with the minimal to no salt, oil, and sugar. So we can help you. There's a link at the bottom of this video that you can click on to contact us. But until then, take care of yourself. You can afford to celebrate. Just know why and how. Until then, God bless. Thank you for joining us here at the HIbiscus Tea Cafe. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and share the information. Your health is your wealth. And I know that there's someone here that you know that can use this information too. So don't keep it to yourself. And join us next time. Until then, enjoy the tea.